chapter 5, I'm gonna to talk about monopoly. Uh, what monopoly profit makes my nation. So the monopoly is a market with only one firm. Firms are price makers, not price takers. In the competitive markets, they are price takers, but now they are price makers. The total revenue is the price of quantity of products times your quantity. Okay. So the average revenue just divided by Q. So your average revenue equals to the price of the price of the item. So we know we have average revenue. Now we differentiate total revenue respect to quantity. We gained the marginal revenue is additional revenue from selling one more unit. So the monopoly faces downward sloping demand curve, and therefore the marginal revenue equals to the differentiate of P price times quantity divided by quantity. So how to differentiate it? The price of quantity divided by quantity is actually the price of quantity, but because it's it's a function plus the q the q divided by quantity is q times the price divided by the differentiate price divided by the differentiate quantity. And because marginal revenue equals to least one, and because it's a positive number, and it's less than it's negative numbers, that means Poisson effect. If you sell more quantity, then your all price need to go down because you need to fit the demand curve. So it's a negative thing. Must less than the price. So the monopolist has to decrease price on all units sold in order to sell one additional unit. It is not the case with a perfectly competitive firm, which cannot influence the price at which it sells. Therefore, marginal revenue curve for monopolist is below average revenue curve. The average revenue curve is demand curve. Why? Because the average revenue is the price. And we know the marginal revenue plus a negative variable, so it must smaller than the average revenue, which is this. So the monopoly never produces at the inelastic part of the demand curve. Marginal revenue equals to this, and by just restructure the equation, we got P times 1 plus the elasticity of the item of demand divided the one divided by the elasticity of demand and its absolute value. So if the elasticity absolute value is smaller than one, the marginal revenue is smaller than zero, because if it's smaller than one, it's a negative number. P times negative number. The marginal revenue is negative. Okay, so if you are a monopolist, in elastic is the epsilon equals to zero. So at the in elastic part of the demand curve, the monopoly never produces. Okay. To maximize profit in a monopoly, firms produce at the marginal revenue equals to marginal cost, which is similar to competitive markets where the price equals to marginal cost equals to marginal revenue. But in monopolies, you don't need to set your price equals to marginal cost, because you are price makers, not price takers. So we got this equation: marginal revenue equals to this and equals to marginal cost. By restructure the equation, this part, we can get the price minus to marginal cost divided by price should equal to negative the elect 1 divided by the demand elasticity. It is a markup or measure of monopoly power, which depends on the elasticity of demand. Higher markup means demand is more inelastic. Uh, so yeah, welfare effects of monopoly. The monopolists produce less than the competitive quantity, reducing total surplus and producing deadweight loss. Because of that poisonous effect, if you want to produce one more item, you need to lower all of your items price. So in order to obey the demand curve, social welfare can be maximized under perfect price discrimination. Because what is social welfare? It's the consumer surplus equals to the producer surplus. If the perfect price discrimination, each consumer pays what they want to pay, so there is no deadweight loss. Okay, so that's it. The first part of monopoly. What to know? Explain why marginal revenue is less than average revenue for a monopolist, but not for a competitive firm. Why? Because in um in the marginal revenue of the marginal revenue is less than the average revenue, because the monopoly added this Q times the derived P over derived Q, and it's a negative one. In a competitive market, it's zero. So we know that average revenue for a monopolist is marginal revenue is less than the average revenue for a monopolist. Know why both a monopolist and perfectly competitive firm wants to set marginal cost equals to marginal revenue. Because at that point you can maximize your profits. Uh, in that point, it's the quantity you should to produce and the competitive market if they are price takers, so the marginal cost must um equals to per price. But in monopolist, first can set price. Explain why a monopolist's market power depends on the elasticity of demand. If now really strict in elastic item, then only monopolists produce it. It's of course monopolists will set a higher price because only they produce it and it's hard for consumers to find a substitution. So it's all related to elasticity of demand. Explain why there is data weight loss when a monopolist cannot price discriminate. Um, because because those that what is actually because those are the people aren't willing to pay at the market equilibrium price. In a competitive market, they can pay for it because it's it's an aggregate equilibrium, and they are willing to pay less in market equilibrium. But in a monopoly, that is not aggregate, and the price is only set by monopolist. So if one consumer didn't want to pay that item for the high price, they won't do that. That costs the deadweight loss. Those transactions in a competitive market should be done, but in a monopoly, they can't be done. Explain why there is no deadweight loss when a monopolist can price discriminate. Yeah, because each person purchase the price what they're willing to pay. Given a cost function and a demand curve, solve the price and equality in the market with a monopolist. Be sure to check whether the monopolist will want to shut down. Um, the monopolist want to shut down, and it's sent as the competitive market is when the price is less than the average variable cost. Derive an equation relating the monopolist markup to the elasticity of demand. Graphically identify the producer surplus, consumer surplus, and the deadweight loss of monopoly in the uniform price case. Okay, the next part of monopoly is to introduce what's what's the origin of monopoly. Nature monopoly occurs when a single firm's average cost continuously decline over the relevant output range due to very high fixed costs and low marginal cost. Like water supplier, they need to the entry barrier is very high and you build a lot of pipes before you enter this water supply or markets. On the other hand, uh, the present water supplier, because the scale is very high, so the average cost continuously declines. So that means you should so that means that cause natural monopoly. Government created monopolies include state promotion, postal services, utilities, or and patents. So how to addressing monopolists? Mandating the price equals to marginal cost eliminates monopoly power and dead weight loss, but it requires knowing the true competitive price, just like the competitive markets. Know that we lost, but you need to know it's hard to measure. Setting P too low can shrink output below even monopoly levels, reducing total welfare. So the government intervention need to sophisticated measure and to know how the market is going on, to know the price equals to marginal cost, what the price is. Okay, so that's about monopoly. Takeaway. Know reasons monopoly why rise. Discuss the pros and cons of patents. Uh, yeah, and graphically show the welfare impact of patents. Graphically show the welfare effect of government's regulation of monopolies. Okay, so it's about monopoly. Thank you for listening. The next part is other market structures. There is oligopoly and yeah, oligopoly. So thank you for listening. I will see you next lecture. Bye bye.